Pam Presley says, J.T. Thomas, all of a sudden, Warner Robins has 80,000 attorneys deciphering their views of the Constitution. Shake my head. Most of the people in this post didn't even graduate from high school, but they act like they know the
Oh
law.
my gosh.
You would think the person that fought for your right to have that freedom of speech would know a little something, something.
Yeah, Pam Presley. Let's look at Pam Presley real quick.
Okay. The picture says it all.
She wants
Okay.
the manager. She
Right?
wants the manager.
That's a kid.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Downloaded Content Podcast. I'm your humble author, narrator, and fictional character, Daniel Louis Crumpton. So it is February the 27th as of this recording, and I wanted to tell you guys about a developing story here in the fictional city of Wartown. But first, do just a little bit of housekeeping, if you don't mind. So those of you who have followed me over from the Wartown Times platform or zeninthecar.com, you know that I have hung up my activist spurs, as I do not believe that there is any way to save the old republic. From my observation, the only effective thing to do is to push through the collapse of the corporation of the United States of America and all of its subsidiaries. So I am now more in the role of an observer or a watcher or a storyteller, here to tell your stories. And so where you're going to be able to find me from here on out is downloadedcontent.com. Now, currently, downloadedcontent.com is on maintenance mode as we have not officially launched. We're looking for a 3/5/25 launch date. It's going to be a real cool website once it's unveiled, and you can join our newsletter and get all of my goodness from that newsletter at downloadedcontent.com. In the meantime, you can find us over on Der Facebook with downloaded content. Go ahead and in a very short amount of time, we've already gotten 502 followers, so I want to thank you guys so much for that, as well as tons of emails and private messages, people from all over the community and the country who are reaching out to us to have their voices heard, to have their stories told. It's very overwhelming sometimes, but I couldn't be happier. You know, me being an author, I love stories. I love your stories, and I'm more than happy to tell them, especially if it has to do with the subject matter of injustice, things like that. Now, I will let you know over here on Spotify, all of the material that we have put out so far is at the Downloaded Content Podcast. So please go ahead and follow, hit the bell, and you can see we've been putting material up, and we're going to be putting a lot more material up. And of course, we'll put a link tree for the Downloaded Content Podcast in the description boxes wherever you're watching or seeing this, so you can follow us all over the interwebs. And so that's kind of what I wanted to let you guys know. For anybody who knows me from zeninthecar.com or the wartowntimes.com, I do not know if I'm going to be going back to the Wartown Times. Honestly, I don't know if there's any more fruit that can come from that platform in regard to building a bridge with the local government or the corporation of the fictional city of Warner Robins. So I'm going to be primarily coming to you from all things downloaded content. So I appreciate your support, and I appreciate you spreading the word. And since I went on break and came back, a lot of people have made some comments to me about my new swag. If you've seen me in public or if you've seen me on any podcast, you see that I am wearing keffiyehs now. And I want to just point something out to you guys. I am very pro-Palestinian. I make no bones about it. I believe that what our government has participated with is nothing short of a genocide, and I think it's sickening that people would dismiss it as anything other than that. But the keffiyeh is not just a sign of being pro-Palestinian, but it's a sign that you are pro-oppressed people everywhere. That's kind of what it's become. So I would highly encourage any of you out there who are activists who care about human rights or civil rights, whether on our land or foreign land, that you find a Palestinian owned company that does produce these high quality keffiyehs and wear it proudly so that we can identify one another. And again, what the keffiyeh is a symbol of solidarity for people who have been oppressed by a colonial mindset that has plagued this planet and this species. So just wanted to say thank you guys who complimented me on the new look. It's more of a statement than a look, but I do really believe in it, and I think it is a real good way for us to identify one another. Now, I want to talk about today a developing story here in Wartown that some of you may or may not have been following, and it is in regard to the First Amendment here. And so I'm going to walk you through this story from my point of view, as a watcher, as someone who pays attention to this type of thing, because I think it's a wonderful opportunity that has been afforded to us to open up these discussions on the First Amendment here in the fictional city of Wartown. So about a week ago, in all the public forums on Der Fishenboeken here in the fictional city of Wartown, kind of lit up over a flyer that was circulating for a Trump the Chump peaceful assembly that was going to occur last Saturday in front of At Home on Watson Boulevard on the sidewalks. And it really opened up a lot of conversations that I think is wonderful. Regardless of where you stand on the issue, it brought a lot of wonderful conversations that we really need to have right now, I think. And so I want to take a look at them. So bear with me here. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So where this discussion really started was on the Warner Robins Police Department's post on February the 21st at 4:50 p.m. And it was a public service announcement. So this was what the public service announcement was. It has come to the attention of the Warner Robins Police Department that a flyer has been distributed in a local school to assemble and protest. This flyer advises for anyone wanting to protest to go to At Home Furniture, 2063 Watson Boulevard on Saturday, February 22nd, and every Saturday afterwards until March 22nd from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. It is the position of the City of Warner Robins and the Warner Robins Police Department to recognize and support the public's right of assembly and free speech, and to utilize designated public facilities for such purposes. At the same time, the city has an important and compelling governmental interest in protecting property, public safety, health, and welfare, and controlling use of streets and other public facilities and venues. City of Warner Robins Municipal Code, Section 2346. In compliance with Article 3 of Chapter 23 of the Warner Robins Municipal Code, the need for a permit is required to assemble in this manner. Per Code Section 2352, the application has to be filed with the Warner Robins Police Department no more than 90 days and no fewer than 7 days to the event date. No permit has been submitted or approved at this time for this assembly. Furthermore, this protest is planned to take place on private property. Representatives from At Home Furniture have advised the Warner Robins Police Department that they have not given permission for the use of their property and do not wish for the assembly to take place on their premises. Therefore, anyone assembling will be in violation of Code Section 23 through 64 of the City of Warner Robins Municipal Code. And so this was the press release here, and this was the nefarious flyer that had been distributed. Defend your rights. This is a completely peaceful protest. Do not go on the roads. Do not harass others. Stay peaceful. Do you feel hopelessly oppressed? Do you feel like you aren't safe with anyone around you? Do you worry you might be next on his list? Do you feel like you can't love thy neighbor without getting condemned by your so-called fellow followers? Or maybe it's as simple as cheaper eggs for you. Do not ask, demand Representative Austin Scott to stand up for Georgians harmed by executive orders. Together we are stronger. And then there's the poem that I like to cite, especially when it comes to the ICE raids of our Hispanic brothers and sisters and neighbors. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. So I thought that was an awesome addition to the flyer, and it looked like to me when it came across my awareness that whoever was organizing this mysterious organizer who had not asked for permission, they feel like a lot of us feel, like we're all being marginalized based off of some demographic that we fit in one way or the other. And it looked like a wonderful lightning rod to try to bring people together so that we don't feel alone, and to, petition our government for a redress of our grievances. So I did want to take the time because again, I do not have a personal Facebook page anymore, so even looking at this Facebook platform is just hard on the eyes because it's so ghetto. It really, really is. And guys, if you haven't taken the time to get off Facebook for a while, it's really good for your mental health. You might want to do it. So I'm so very glad that I don't have a personal account anymore, that I just let other people run the business accounts. That's okay. So let's take a look at some of these comments in here. So let's see. The Stephanie Hernandez, who is responsible for the deportation rallies. I ran into this issue with mine, but it's a fact you need permission to organize yourself or able to park on a certain property before you go to the sidewalk. It's difficult and very confusing. And let's see, Kira Davies here says, laugh my ass off. We respect your right to protest against all fascist government as long as you follow all our government's rules and regulations about how to protest. That's a good one, Kyra. Let's see here. MASH AD says, everyone who disagrees with me is a fascist. I don't know what fascism means, but I know everyone who disagrees with me is one. So had nothing to do with the context. So thanks, MASH. There's a chat GPT response here. Here's another one. Let's see. Wow. Jeremy Barker says, many people assume that police have a legal duty to protect individuals, but court rulings have actually established that they don't. The U.S. Supreme Court case Castle Rock versus Gonzalez, 2005, ruled that police are not legally required to enforce restraining orders or protect individuals from harm. Summarily, in Descheny versus Winnebago County, 1989, the court found that the government has no duty to protect citizens from private violence. These rulings mean that while police can choose to help, they are not legally obligated to intervene or protect individuals in many situations. So, let's see. TJ Paramore, kudos to those that wish to peacefully gather to protest and exercise their rights to free speech. Kudos to the Warner Robins Police Department for affirming these rights and informing everyone of the necessary steps to ensure it is done the right way. Okay. Will Braunstein, did the comments turn out like you dingleberries thought it would? I feel like they didn't. Carlos V. Flores says, I'm sure 13WMAZ would love to see the Warner Robins Police Department arrest a bunch of high school kids for peacefully protesting. Bonus if they bring the dogs and water hoses. See, Tiffany Lynch says, requiring permits for constitutionally protected rights has lost in court multiple times. Now, thank you, Tiffany, for bringing up the First Amendment. So, Andrew Lloyd says to Tiffany Lynch, according to the First Amendment, you have the right to peacefully protest on public sidewalks in the city, as it is considered a traditional public forum where the protection of free speech is strongest, meaning you can express your views through protest speeches and signs while staying on the sidewalk and not obstructing pedestrian traffic significantly. Key points to remember: protected activity. Peaceful assembly and expression on public sidewalks are protected under the First Amendment. Reasonable restrictions. While you have the right to protest, local governments can impose reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions on protests, like requiring permits for large gatherings or ensuring pedestrian access. No disruption. You should not obstruct traffic or intentionally impede others while protesting. Let's see here. Nicole Thompson, I don't know, but that's an awesome flyer and idea, especially as it's made from students. People need to stop keeping these kids quiet and let them speak up. It's their future too. And if it's all in good fun, what's the harm? It's better than them doing dope or breaking into cars. Let kids be kids and see the difference. Be careful out there, kiddos. Rachel Lyons, for anybody following this, free speech is still free on public property, and as long as you're not blocking public right-of-way or impeding the free use of public property, you are free to protest on that property without the license. If the protest is scheduled to take place on private property, change the location. Power to the people. Tiffany Stew says, I still think it's weird as fuck that we need a permit to exercise our constitutional rights. Does the Constitution still matter, though? Really, if At Home doesn't want protesters, maybe that's exactly where it belongs. Tyler Brock says, yeah, I don't think they need a permit to exercise their First Amendment right, but go off. If you get arrested, hire a lawyer. Charlie Holt says, they don't need a permit. Spread that protest around, keep it peaceful and on the sidewalks. I'm going to go ahead and like that, Charlie. To the people who protest, you have to dot your I's and cross your T's. Everyone has a right to protest. It is a part of free speech, but you have to make sure you do so legally. Every city has different rules and regulations that must be followed. Warner Robins PD and the city of Warner Robins are not saying you can't protest. This all comes down to common sense and following the law. JT Thomas says, what a joke. Any law that is repugnant to the U.S. Constitution is null and void of law. Article 6, Paragraph 2 of the Constitution. You, Warner Robins Police Department, or city municipal codes cannot turn a constitutional right under the First Amendment into a privilege requiring a permit to exercise therein. So, as long as the protesters are on the sidewalk, public property, in front of the establishment, and not on private property, which was the only thing stated correctly in this public notice, it is 100% lawful. Stop trying to be tyrants. Follow the Constitution. Okay, so Thank you, JT Thomas. And I really wanted to get to his comment because I have some additional comments of my own to say about this. So thank you, JT Thomas. If I'm not mistaken, I think he may be former military. So let's see here. Pam Presley says, JT Thomas, all of a sudden, Warner Robins has 80,000 attorneys deciphering their views of the Constitution. Shake my head. Most of the people on this post didn't even graduate from high school, but they act like they know the law. And so this is, that's JT Thomas. This is Pam Presley, who believes that you have to be a lawyer. So this is Pam Presley, who believes that you have to be a lawyer to claim your unalienable rights. Just wanted to point that out there. Thank you, Pam, for condescending to 80,000 people and letting them know that they really don't have any grip on what their Constitution or what their fundamental rights are unless they happen to be in a trade union known as the Bar Association. So thanks, Pam. So overall, I mean, it has sparked a wonderful conversation on whether or not you need to get a permit or not to exercise your First Amendment. And so 13 WMAZ, because of all the hubbub in the Derfation booking groups, they ran a story to verify whether or not you needed a permit to exercise your First Amendment. So let's take a look at their piece over there at 13 WMAZ. All right, so 13 WMAZ, verify. Do you need a permit for protest gatherings in Georgia? And I want you to pay attention to the wording here. Okay. So we respect the opportunity for folks to express their rights to free speech. We just always have to do it in a respectful manner, Police Chief Wayne Fisher said. So let's go ahead and see what their clip is. Yeah.
There's a lot of uncertainty in the air over federal jobs, immigration, and other topics. This weekend, some folks in Warner Robins organized a protest. Now people are questioning if a statement from the Warner Robins Police Department violates their First Amendment rights. Megan Western spent the day separating fact from fiction.
Let's verify. Do you need a permit to protest? Our sources, the Warner Robins Police Department, the American Civil Liberties Union, and the United States Supreme Court. Now, according to the American Civil Liberties Union Resource Guide, the First Amendment allows you to use public streets, sidewalks, and parks for public forums like protests or marches. But you may need a permit if the event blocks traffic, requires street closure, uses sound amplifying devices, or is held in a certain park or plaza. Now, back in 1941, the Supreme Court gave local governments the right to require permits for public gatherings in the Cox versus New Hampshire case. So our answer needs more context. You may need a permit to gather depending on where you live. Let's look at the city of Warner Robins.
There is a permit to assemble. It's a generalized form which would have to be completed by the person seeking to host the event.
Police Chief Wayne Fisher says applicants should fill out this form at least 7 days before the event. He says breaking news events are exceptions to that, but organizers still should fill out a permit. By law, police can't deny your protest based on the content. And when it comes to standing on the sidewalk and having a public gathering or a protest, Chief Fisher says even that isn't advised.
While you do have a right to free speech, you don't have a right to impede the safety of others in their access to the public space.
Fisher says they respect free speech, but these permits make sure public gatherings are protected.
To consider bringing other officers off duty in to accommodate to ensure that there's a safe environment.
So we can verify you may need a permit to protest depending on your local government. With your Verify, I'm Megan Western.
As Megan mentioned, this permit goes for any public gathering, even like a birthday at a city park. You have to rent out the city parks for events, and they can't permit a gathering on private property without the owner's permission. Do you have something you want verified?
Right.
Reach out to us on Facebook.
So you guys can check that article out over at 13 WMAZ. And the question is, do you need a permit to protest? And again, I want you to pay attention to the question. Do you need a permit to protest? The sources were the Warner Robins Police Department, the American Civil Liberties Union Foundation, and the United States Supreme Court. Not the Constitution, just pointing that out. The answer, it needs context, and I agree with that. You may need a permit to protest depending on your local government. Okay, what we found. According to a guide by the American Civil Liberties Union, the First Amendment allows use of public streets, sidewalks, and parks for public forums like protests or marches. However, you may need a permit if the event blocks traffic, requires street closures, uses sound amplifying devices, or is held in certain parks or plazas. Okay, so I'm going to hold my commentary off on what I think the answer to this question is until the end of this. But in the meantime, what I want to do is just walk you through the actual story from my point of view. So here is how I experienced it. So when I saw the flyer actually taking Archer the Space Noodle for a walk, I saw it on a light post, and then I called my friends in the Illuminati to find out who the organizers were, and what the situation is. And so I want to make sure that I clarify from the streets what occurred. So I did find out who the organizer of this peaceable assembly was, and as it turned out, they wanted to do something. A lot of us in this country want to do something, and we'll get to them in just a minute because we got some really good footage from this peaceable assembly. And of course, whenever you are trying to make a difference, and then the Warner Robins PD or anybody in law enforcement puts out a public service announcement, it could be a little anxiety inducing, right? And so they wanted to make sure that they did everything right. They didn't want to, flip off the Warner Robins PD or any law enforcement. That's not what they were trying to do. That was not their motivation at all. And this was the first time they've ever done it. So they didn't know how this type of thing works. And they were of the opinion that, okay, well, if the business owners of At Home don't want it there, well, we don't want to be there. And of course, now there is a public sidewalk in front of that establishment, which is considered public property. However, as I believe in, the divine providence, the hand of divine providence that was there for the founding fathers and the birth of our old republic, I think it showed up. And through the networks of the interwebs and those who actually care in our community, the organizers got a hold of the head of the Houston County Democratic Party, Kristen Kiefer, who is a rock star. I've said that many times. Not that I'm a Democrat. You guys know I'm not politically affiliated to any party, because I think, but nothing against Kristen. But anyway, Kristen, through her vast connections, got a hold of Alonzo Smith, who he's a private property owner on Commercial Circle. He owns the building. If you guys are coming through Wartown, you see the John Good Trouble Lewis mural. And as fate and circumstance would have it, Alonzo Smith was cool enough to say, hey, problem solved. You guys are more than welcome to come and have your peaceable assembly on my private property, which means you don't need a permit to do it. And as long as you stay on that property and the sidewalks, there's no need for the Warner Robins PD to get involved whatsoever. So you don't have to get a permit, and you guys can go and do your stuff as planned. And so I thought that was cool. So me, the lovely Mona Lucia from MonaLucia.com, Sabrina Black from DivineAmerica.co, we wanted to show up and show our support and cover the event and get some interviews there. And so we did. And I want to share a few of the people who were gathered there from all walks of life. We wanted to pull them to the side and say, hey, why are you here? If you want to speak a few minutes as to why you're here and what this is all about, so that the public can kind of get an unfiltered and unbiased view of it, let's go for it. And so let's go ahead and watch the clip that we have there. And somewhere in the end of this, you're going to meet who I believe is an absolute superheroine in our community. I'm not going to say her full name. I'm just going to say the young Miss Marvel, Samantha. And so let's take a look at the footage that we caught while we were at this peaceable assembly. All right, now what was your name?
Alonzo Smith.
Alonzo Smith. I'm Daniel with the downloadedcontent.com. And so we're having the Chump protest out here.
Right.
Now, it was scheduled for somewhere else, but somehow or another it ended up here. You want to tell people how it ended up here?
Well, the young lady over the Democratic Committee, Military Democratic Committee, contacted me last night and asked me to be okay. So I told her yes, it was fine. And Christian and I, we worked close together on a lot of projects, so I told her it was fine.
Okay.
Yes.
And so you support the this demonstration?
I do.
All right.
Yes, sir.
And this mural here, I think it's real appropriate that the protest is here.
The Good Trouble.
Good trouble.
Yeah. Well, matter of fact, Christian, the Democratic Committee had that mural put there about a couple of years ago. Yeah.
And do you share the same concerns as these people against the Trump administration?
I do.
And what are your primary concerns about the Trump administration?
Trouble. Yeah, because it seemed to me he's totally against unity, so it's just trouble.
Right.
Yeah.
And if things like this don't keep up, I think that we got an interesting 4 years. So
I don't think we'll make it.
yeah, no, I don't. So is there anything else you want to let people know about this protest moving forward? Is it going to be held here every Saturday until March?
I told them fine with me. They have my permission to whenever they want to, they can have it.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, there was a PSA by the Warner Robins Police Department about getting a permit, but this is private property. Is that correct?
Right.
And so they don't need a permit to be here on your private property.
From what I hear, they don't.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why Kristen called me, because she knew I own this building, and I told her it's fine. Yes.
All right. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your patriotism.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Y'all have a good one. Okay?
You too. What brought you to this protest today?
Upset with what's occurring in my country. I'm furious at Congress acquiescing their duties that are spelled out in the Constitution.
Speak up just a little bit. Sorry.
I'm furious as Congress is acquiescing its duties for budgetary control and government agency control to Elon Musk and President Trump. This is not what is spelled out in the Constitution. If they want to eliminate agencies, there is a method that's prescribed, which is Congress takes action, gets on record, votes, and does that. Kicking out air traffic controllers, firing people that are running veterans hotlines. The list goes on. Nuclear inspectors. It's short-sighted. It's immature. It's shoot first, ask questions later. No, that's not the way it's done. I'm sorry, it's not. I've been a Republican, I've been a Democrat. I've lived in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and now Georgia. And I'm a citizen of the United States, and thank God we all have the right to protest, and that's what brought me out today.
Thank you so much for coming out. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And yeah, we'll keep it up, and thank you for standing up for the Constitution.
Thanks.
I'm going to stop it right there because now we're going to speak to the actual mastermind behind all of this, who I think is one of the most beautiful, inspiring, and passionate people that I have met in a long time. And she has certainly given your humble author, narrator, and fictional character hope for the future, because young Samantha here has demonstrated more courage than I have seen in adults in a very, very long time. So I want you to really pay attention to what the beautiful Samantha has to say, and really take it to heart, no matter where you stand on what this peaceable assembly was about. Listen to someone who is legitimately trying to make a difference in her community and in her world, and let it soak in, and ask yourself if you got half as much backbone as this young, beautiful woman. All right, so your name is Samantha, and you are a high schooler, is that right?
Yes.
You want to say what school you go to or not?
I go to Northside High School.
Okay, and you're the one who put this protest on, is that right? All right, and how long ago did you put this protest on?
Maybe like 2 weeks or so.
2 weeks ago? All right, and so let me ask you a question. Do you want to talk about what compelled you, what fired you up to do something like this?
There were so many people around me, so many videos, so many just general people, my friends, my family, literally everyone around me. Everyone was so scared of what was going to happen, but it didn't seem like anything was happening, like anybody was doing anything. And like, I saw so many people saying like, get off your phone, like actually do something, stand up, but nobody was doing it yet. And I used to have like horrible horrible anxiety and horrible social anxiety. But in recent years, my dad has helped me out with a lot of that, and I think that is one of the biggest reasons I wanted to be one of the people to stand up and actually help people do this. A lot of things happened to me, and I never spoke out about them, even if they were horrible things, because I was scared I would get in trouble, or they would get in trouble, or whatever. But I think I kind of just stopped caring.
What else do you got to lose?
Yeah, and like so many people are horrified of what Trump is doing, and like so many people just want to change and want to live as who they want to be or who they are. And I feel like that's something that's so important. I've always loved like diversity in people. I've always loved seeing people's different hobbies or what they're like or stuff like that. And I just think it's so beautiful that people can have such different qualities and such different traits, and we all just exist here. And we're all so different and so awesome, and a lot of that is getting blinded by Trump. A lot of that is getting shut down because of Trump, and I don't know. I can't, like, no.
Seems like he's at war with diversity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something that we are biologically enabled to do.
Right.
Literally, it is in our blood.
Now we're down here in the South. Did you feel a little bit of fear of trying to put a protest on deep down in the South?
Not really.
No?
Well, yes, but no. Mainly because of how many people around me were scared already. My friends, a lot of my friends have Republican parents. A lot of my friends just can't do anything about it. But I know there's like adults, people who can do something about it.
Yeah.
If there's somewhere to go. If there's like, not a leader, but
You are a leader.
I think you are. I think your dad's right.
I don't know.
So you hear all these people honking?
Yeah.
And you understand that that's because you had the bravery and the courage to stand up and do what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
So you see how one person can make a difference. So that right there, in my opinion, is setting the perfect example of why Trump is wrong. So you keep doing what you're doing. Is there anything else you want to say to people out there who may feel like they're alone because they're in some demographic that's under attack right now?
No one is ever alone, no matter where you are. There will always be someone like you, no matter where you are, no matter what they look like, no matter anything. There will always be someone who cares and who will try to do something, who will want to do something. Sometimes you need a little push.
Yeah. So this is called the Trump the Chump protest, right?
Yeah, that was what it was originally called. Actually, my dad.
Dad, get on in there.
Yeah.
Go on.
The first thing I was gonna call it was Dump the Trump, which is actually one of the signs out there right now. Because he had jokingly suggested that I put Dump the Trump on my first flyer, and I was like, he kind of onto something.
It's right. It's catchy. So
It's nice.
So this protest is going to be, from my understanding, every Saturday until.
I wanted it to be every Saturday, but
We're going to take a little break and plan
plan a little better.
Okay, but you're going to keep pushing, right?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well,
yes.
I think you got support if you keep pushing.
I hope, gosh.
And I think that the numbers are going to get bigger and bigger. So do you want to tell people where they can find you on social media or where they can find a page for this particular protest?
There's not one for this protest.
Yeah, I didn't really make one. I didn't want to make one because I still kind of am. I'm scared of I don't know, getting death threats or something crazy happening.
They can look me up on as Thomas Thurman on Facebook.
It's probably better.
Thomas Thurman and Warner Robbins on Facebook. I think I'm the only one on there. I'm also GeorgiaFossils.com on Facebook. Georgia Fossils group on Facebook. Yeah, they can look me up there.
It's probably better if they reach out to my dad instead of me. Not gonna lie.
And you got to be proud as all get out.
Oh yeah. We
were talking earlier, and you were saying that once you needed to stand up and put a face to it and everything.
Yeah.
But you want to talk a little bit about what this all means to you and why you're backing your daughter so hard.
Back again, but like I told her earlier, there are people on the other side who want to cover their face when they do things, but you got to have courage to stand up and show your face and show people that what you stand for. And part of that is your responsibility in standing up. So yeah, you stand up for what you believe in, and you show your face and let people know who you are and what you believe in. That's the bravest thing I know to do. If you don't fight for what you believe in and for everybody, my thing I tell her all the time if we don't stand up for the right of others, then others won't stand up for our rights.
Right.
That's actually that's like going along with the quote that I put on the flyer.
Do you know that quote from World War II? First they came for the Jews, and I said,
Yeah, that's the one that's on
there
the flyer.
You go. Yeah.
First they came for the socialists, then they came for the trade unionists, and then they came for the Jews. And when they came for me, there was no one else to speak for me. That was roughly what it was. I put that on the flyer because I feel like it's very reminiscent of what's happening right now.
Well, what Trump's doing is flooding the zone, and he's making everybody in any kind of group or demographic feel isolated and compartmentalized. And it's like, well, that's not my jam. I'm not going to go and speak up for those people. And that is the exact wrong attitude that we need right now.
Everybody's has something that isolates them. Everybody. You can be black, you can be Asian, you can be mixed race like my daughter is. You can be thin, you can be old, bald, whatever. Everybody's got something. But we got to stand together. If we don't, we can't let the Constitution get trashed. There's a reason it's lasted as long as it is, and we've got to make sure it lasts a little longer.
There's a reason. There's like a thing that I like to say sometimes. Everyone's blood is red, and everything's blood is red. No one is an alien. No one is vermin. No one is anything of the sort. Everybody is still just a person, and I think that's very important to me. Everyone's blood is red. Everyone is of the same. Everyone,
We're all walking each other home.
Yeah.
Thank you for being a superhero. Me and her, we got a nickname for you, Miss Marvel, because you remind us to come on. You must be so proud raising a superhero. Thank you for raising a superhero, and thank you for doing this. And you keep it up.
I wish that
and back up.
Thank you.
And I cannot express to you guys how much of an honor it was for us to meet those two. It really does make your humble author, narrator, and fictional character light up to see people who will take a stand and will do something in their community to raise awareness to the issues. And so, and what did this brave young woman actually do on short notice with, Warner Robins PD, PSAs looming in the air and a lot of controversy? What she managed to do is bring a group of people together. And I just want to go through a few of the images. So what did this brave young woman and her awesome father who backs her up, what did they manage to pull off? They managed to pull off a peaceable assembly where the best people in Wartown were able to come together and show their support and, have their voices heard too. Of course, you have Archer the Space Noodle. If he shows up, it's divine. He was there. The lovely Mona Lucia from MonaLucia.com. Obviously, she was riding shotgun. And Law Dixon was also in attendance with his kids. And I'm going to tell you something. Law Dixon really made me sit up in my chair in our podcast with him that we did last week about his experiences during Operation Rolling Thunder. He really earned my respect with the phrase, "It's better that this happens to me than to my sons." And that right there proved to me that he has the spirit of the founding fathers and that fire to forge a new republic, because that was their attitude. That, if tyranny was going to come, that it come in our day so that we could put a stop to it before it goes to the next generation. And that says a lot about a man's character, because he's willing to do something that a lot of people who are in elected positions, they don't have the backbone to do. They don't have the foresight to do. They think in very short terms, and they don't think about what they are leaving behind for their progeny. That's a tragedy. And so to counterbalance that, we have epic people like Law Dixon showing up. And I would be derelict in my duty if I did not mention that Mike Jizzle Jones of Controversial Conversations was also in attendance. He does wonderful things in the community. He's actually trying to get a program started with a venue where he can begin teaching people, civics 101, their fundamental rights and things of that nature, which we really need right now. And I'm more than happy to stand side by side with Mike Jizzle Jones in that endeavor and do what I can to help him there. So all of his information will also be in the description boxes, no matter where you're listening or viewing this. So please click on that, as well as Law Dixon's, because I'm going to tell you something. These two guys, unfortunately, here's the thing. The birth of an activist must come through injustice. Okay, sad but true. Typically, we don't pay attention to what's going on around us until it affects us, and then we know that something's wrong. We got to do something. And between Law Dixon and Mike Jones, they are certainly doing something about the nature of this empire that we're in. So, but yeah, I wanted to show you guys a few shots of this peaceable assembly on private property. And this is a public sidewalk, but nevertheless, no permit required. It's pretty cool what one 16-year-old girl can do when she has courage, even though she's trembling. She can bring a community together and have something beautiful like this occur. So I thought it was awesome. And we got we made a lot of new connections, networking connections to try to form an alliance, if you will, to stop this destruction of our country that is occurring thanks to, this nitwit that a lot of apathetic and ignorant people put into office. So overall, it was a success. It was a peaceable assembly. There was no contact that I'm aware of from local law enforcement. No Linco Bearcats came out, no tear gas, no dogs, no anything like that. Was it because it was on private property? Probably. But yeah, it was a wonderful turnout, and it will be continuing every Saturday at the same location, as far as I'm aware, until March the 22nd. Now, it's funny, and this is why it's so important for issues like this to pay attention to long-form content like independent bloggers, independent podcasters, YouTubers, and things like that, because your local media, they don't always get the full picture. They have a news cycle that is go, 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 that they really can't see the broader picture. And sometimes they get it wrong. And I'm not saying that they intentionally do it, though sometimes that is the case. But sometimes it's just because they just don't have the time. Now, that being the case, I did want to share a perspective of this event with you that I think is pertinent to have in your cerebellum. So let's take a look at an article that Sabrina Black from divineamerica.co put out after the event. So if you go over to divineamerica.co and make sure you subscribe, this is a good friend and partner in activist crime over the past 13 years, Sabrina Black, and she wrote an article, A Censored Warner Robins Defies Media and Government Suppression at the Leadership of a 16-Year-Old Girl. Despite threats from the local police and warnings from the media, a 16-year-old girl brought a Warner Robins community together to stand against corruption and injustice. What began as a protest against political injustice became a moment of resistance, proof that the power to challenge authority isn't reserved for adults. In the face of intimidation and manipulation, it was youth, not age or experience, that sparked the fire of defiance and restored hope in the future generation. On Saturday, January the 22nd, Warner Robins became the stage for a protest within a protest, a fight not just against political injustice, but also against the narrative crafted by authorities and mainstream media. The event, spearheaded by a determined 16-year-old girl, stood as a testament to the power of youth and community action against the rising tide of suppression. Warnings and intimidation tactics. Prior to the protest, the Warner Robins Police Department issued warnings claiming the gathering was in violation of permit regulations. The police made it clear that protesters could be breaking the law simply by showing up. Such warnings, while often framed as standard procedure, are an undeniable tool of deterrence. It raises a crucial question. When did free assembly become a privilege rather than a right? And this is a question that's being asked in the Warner Robins Facebook groups. So, news outlets quickly picked up the police's message with articles painting the protest as an unlawful event before it even began. WGXA and HHJ Online, that's the Houston Home Journal, framed the gathering as a violation rather than an act of civic engagement. The narrative was clear. If you attend, you're stepping out of line. The truth on the ground. Despite these tactics, the protest went on. Dozens of attendees showed up in defiance of the intimidation. Among them were notable freedom activists and truth seekers Daniel Louis Crumpton, that's me, Mike Jones, Mona Lucia, and Law Dixon. Their presence added a critical voice to the event, further amplifying the message that this protest was about more than just policy. It was about justice and truth. Strikingly, while police warnings implied heavy enforcement, the reality told a different story. Throughout the event, 4 police vehicles were observed passing by, yet none stopped. No arrests were made. Instead, what we witnessed were suspected reporting agents, individuals who appeared briefly, observed, and left. Whether these were undercover officers, informants, or just curious onlookers remains uncertain. What is certain, however, is that law enforcement was aware and watching. Media manipulation, a protest erased. But here's the kicker. Do you know who wasn't in attendance? Local news reporters, local police. I guess they didn't want that kind of news getting out. Maybe the police, realizing their threats were being called out in hundreds of comments across social media, decided it was best not to get more egg on their faces. While attendees stood their ground, the media made it clear that the protest was irrelevant. In an astonishing display of journalistic malpractice, Yahoo News boldly reported that nobody showed. Nobody. The dozens of individuals who stood under the weight of intimidation and misinformation would beg to differ. The activists who traveled to document the event would certainly contest such a blatant falsehood. The misrepresentation of reality is precisely why independent reporting and activism are crucial, because the mainstream media is too often a willing accomplice to suppression. The bigger picture. At the heart of this protest was a resistance against Trump's current orders and policies, targeting diverse communities in America. It was a call to action against a government that continues to implement measures disproportionately affecting marginalized groups. Yet, instead of open discussion, the response was suppression, first through legal intimidation, then through media distortion. The Warner Robins protest is more than just an isolated event. It's a reflection of the larger battle being waged across the nation. It highlights the lengths to which authorities and their allies will go to discourage dissent and reshape reality. But as long as there are those willing to stand, to document, and to call out injustice, the fight is far from over. The protest happened, the people were there, and the truth will not be erased. So that is from Sabrina Black over at Divine America, and that is a view, and I don't think that it's a view that is out of line. So first, let me preface this by saying, well, let's take a look at, the House and Home Journal. Their article was, Police Department says upcoming protest unlawful. So that's kind of how they framed it. And let's see, the WGXA, they framed it with Warner Robins police warn potential protesters of permit violations of head of assembly. So that's the way that they kind of saw it. Now, if we go back to Ms. Black's article, she wanted to point out the Yahoo News, which was from the Telegraph. Nobody showed up to the political protest. Let's see here. Nobody showed up to the political protest after Warner Robins police tried to shut it down. So, a busy road in Warner Robins was quiet Saturday after police weren't... Now, the Telegraph, they went to the wrong location. And so, from their point of view, nobody showed up, right? And, of course, they, too, saw it as the Warner Robins Police Department trying to shut it down. So, these are views that are valid. The angle that, hey, is the Warner Robins PD or local government, are they overstepping by their PSA? And everybody has their view. Now, I will let you know that we are also covering a story with Sabrina Black, the author of this article, where not too long ago she became the victim of the state through the use of flock cameras, which resulted in her getting tased and carried to a cage, and all sorts of horrible things happening to her because of the flock camera system. And so it doesn't surprise me that the way that she would view this entire thing is from the point of view of this article, which is it seemed like the Warner Robins PD was trying to say, hey, you have to get our permission to do anything. So that's her view. She's sticking to it, and I respect it. And of course, going back to the comments in the Warner Robins Police Department Facebook groups, a lot of other people in Wartown, they're of the same opinion. So and like I said, the good thing is it's started this conversation about the First Amendment.
Can of sense is common sense.
Welcome to the Can of Sense Total Wellness Collective. You're just a few simple clicks away from getting the cannabis products you want and have them delivered right to your home. So how does it work? Don't worry, it's easy. First, go to canasense.com. Click the Join Now button. Next, fill out the sponsorship form. If you don't have a sponsor, just type CanaSense in the field. Next, submit the form and wait for your welcome email. Once you receive your welcome email, log into your account. Click on Apothecary to see all of the available inventory. Choose your products, pay for your order, and track your package. Remember, delivery times vary by location.
So where my perspective is on this is, for one, the organizer and her father were not trying to, flip off law enforcement or the Warner Robins PD. They were trying to stay in compliance. And they were more than happy to relocate to private property that just so happened to pop up just in time, so that none of this, all of this codes and ordinances and municipalities and all their rules and regulations became a moot thing. It wasn't their intention to try to, throw dirt in the face of the Warner Robins PD at all. And I will tell you that from my point of view, I believe that Chief Wayne Fisher, as well as Assistant Chief of Police in Warner Robins, Todd Edwards, I think they're honorable men. I think that they are doing what they believe was in the interest of the public good, and, crossing their T's and dotting their I's. I mean, they weren't outright with their public service announcement saying, we're going to arrest you or anything like that, even though a lot of people in the community did take it that way. They took it as, okay, well, if these kids show up, are you going to bring the Linco Bearcats out? Which I would also like to know, I wonder if the guys who do run the Linco Bearcat assault tanks here in Warner Robins, if they suited up that morning just in case they got to use their toy. But, I think that the Warner Robins PD, I think they were trying to do their due diligence and, state what codes they go by. And again, it did open up a conversation, do you? And so now we're going to come back around to that, which is, do you need a permit to protest? Which is how 13 WMAZ framed their verify piece, is, do you need a permit to protest? And if you want to know what your humble author, narrator, and fictional character has to say about that, well, first let's look at the actual text of the First Amendment, okay? And if you don't have a pocket constitution, we're more than happy to provide you one. Just hit us up through our socials, or you can email us at dlc@downloadedcontent.com. But the First Amendment says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So if you ask your humble author, narrator, and fictional character if you need a permit to protest, I would say, I don't know, but you don't need a permit to peaceably assemble and ask the government for a redress of your grievances. And I want to go through a couple of things to back up my position on that. Now, you guys who were following the Wartown Times, if you're aware, back in season 2, we put out a friendly neighborhood manifesto, and you can find this PDF over at thewartowntimes.com, or you can, email me at dlc@downloadedcontent.com, and we're happy to give it to you. But let's take a look at what it says on this. So Article 6, Section 2 of our handy-dandy Constitution, it says, this Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made, or which shall be made, under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or the laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. And so, in layman terms, this is in your Constitution. It's called the Supremacy Clause, or most people refer to it as that. And it means that this right here is supreme. Supreme means there's nothing greater than that. Everything underneath it, that's your statutory state law, okay, and any city ordinance is inferior to the supreme law. So what the Supremacy Clause is saying in very plain English is that anything that comes after the Constitution, if it contradicts what is a previously secured right, it's notwithstanding, and it's notwithstanding in law. And so to further give that some teeth, You want to look at Marbury versus Madison, 5 U.S. 137, which is an 1803 Supreme Court case. It's never been overturned. And essentially, read the whole case yourself. It says, anything that is in conflict is null and void of law. Clearly, for a secondary law to come in conflict with the supreme law was illogical. For certainly, the supreme law would prevail over all other laws, and certainly our forefathers had intended that the supreme law would be the basis of all law. And for any law to come in conflict would be null and void of law. It would bear no power to enforce. It would bear no obligation to obey. It would purport to settle as if it had never existed. For unconstitutionality would date from the enactment of such a law, not from the date so branded in open court of law. No courts are bound to uphold it, and no citizens are bound to obey it. It operates as a near nillity or a fiction of law. So I hope that that's real clear for you guys. And again, go look up Marbury versus Madison. Essentially, anything that any entity underneath the supreme law, if they mandate you to do something and you already have a previously secured right, it's a fiction of law. Courts are not, they're not bound to, they have no power to enforce it, and you have no obligation to obey it. And so if you want to add a little bit more to that, and these are some Supreme Court cases that you guys really need to memorize. Murdoch versus Pennsylvania, 319 U.S. 105, 1943. And this is what that Supreme Court case said. A state may not impose a charge for the enjoyment of a right granted by the federal Constitution, and that a fiat license tax here involves restraints and advance the constitutional liberties of press and religion, and inevitable tends to suppress their existence. That the ordinance is non-discriminatory, and that it applies also to peddlers of wares and merchandise is immaterial. The liberties granted by the First Amendment are and in a preferred position, since the privilege in question is guaranteed by the federal Constitution and exists independently of the state's authority. The inquiry as to whether the state has given something for which it cannot ask a return is irrelevant. No state may convert any secured liberty into a privilege and issue a license and a fee for it. So to further back that up, if you go to Shuttlesworth versus Birmingham, Alabama, 373 U.S. 262, 1962, if the state does convert your right into a privilege and issue a license and a fee for it, you can ignore the license and a fee and engage the right with impunity. So these are Supreme Court cases which have never been overturned, and essentially they say the buck stops with the pocket constitution here. Your First Amendment says there should be no law at all to restrict your right to assemble peaceably. And, you know, of course, I am not an internet lawyer. I am an American that understands what his rights are. And you will have people like the lady in the Facebook messages that's like, oh, well, we can only delegate and relegate what the law means and who it's for to members of the Bar Association. And to people who think like that, I would also want to point out Yikwo versus Hopkins, 118 U.S. 356, which is an 1886 case. And this is one of the justices wrote this. My good friend and mentor, Neil Schloss, the CEO of CanaSense Total Wellness, he's the one that turned me on to this one. So Yikwo versus Hopkins says this: sovereignty itself is, of course, not subject to the law, for it is the author and source of law. But in our system, while sovereign powers are delegated to the agencies of government, sovereignty itself remains with the people, by whom and for whom all government exists and acts. And the law is the definition and limitation of power. It is indeed quite true that there must always be lodged somewhere, and in some person or body, the authority of final decision, and in many cases of mere administration, the responsibility is purely political. No appeal lying except to the ultimate tribunal of the public judgment, exercised either in the pressure of opinion or by means of the suffrage. But the fundamental rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness considered as individual possessions are secured by those maxims of constitutional law, which are the monument showing the victorious progress of the race in securing to men the blessings of civilization under the reign of just and equal laws. So that, in the famous language of the Massachusetts Bill of Rights, the government of the Commonwealth may be a government of laws and not of men. For the very idea that one man may be compelled to hold his life or the means of living or any material right essential to the enjoyment of life at the mere will of another seems to be intolerable in any country where freedom prevails as being the essence of slavery itself. And so what I want to point out to you is sovereignty itself is, of course, not subject to the law, for it is the author and source of law. But in our system, while sovereign powers are delegated to the agencies of government, sovereignty itself remains with the people, which means we the people are the ones who give power to the law ultimately. And something that was brought up, a theme that was brought up at the last city council meeting that we spoke at, is that there is a hierarchy and everybody has a boss. And I totally understand that point of view. However, what I would also say is that according to Yickwa versus Hopkins and the Constitution, at the top of the hierarchy is we the people. We the people are the boss. And if you don't understand that with just these few Supreme Court cases, the supremacy clause, and your common sense, then keep asking lawyers for their opinions, because they're agents of the court and they're obligated to be subservient to the court no matter what. And I got news for you. In the Houston County criminal justice system or court system, which is being sued by the DOJ for gerrymandering, if you think that they're going to let you know any of this or that they're going to agree with you on any of this, then you got another thing coming. So what it really, really comes down to is, do you have the same amount of courage as this 16-year-old superhero? Okay? Do you have the courage to know your rights and to exert your rights regardless of what any inferior code has to say? So to kind of summarize my whole position on this is, do you need a permit to protest? I don't know, but you do not need any permission or a permit to peaceably assemble and petition your government for a redress of grievance. Now, we all know, stay safe, don't block traffic, don't be a nuisance. We know that. We're responsible Americans. We know how to peaceably assemble. We know what that is. So my answer to you would be, no, you don't. You got a First Amendment. This is the supreme law of the land. Any code that comes from the city of Warner Robins, which is a corporation, is inferior to it, and you're only obligated to obey any of that by your own mutual consent. So that puts the onus on them on whether or not they are going to obey their oath to the Constitution and the people who are the beneficiaries of that contract. It puts it on them. I mean, look, could they show up with Linco Bearcats if you exert your rights as the Supreme Court cases suggest that you should? Yeah, they could. And, make sure you're live streaming and that you have bail money and things like that. But, freedom and liberty are not for the weak, the weak-hearted, those who don't have a backbone. Freedom and liberty is dangerous business, but that's what America is supposed to be about. And so that is my take. If you want to ask Uncle Daniel here if you need permission to protest, the answer is I don't know. You don't need a permission to exercise your First Amendment, though. So that's what I have to say about that. Now, moving on, again, exercising your rights is a scary thing, and it does come with consequences. But as Thomas said, whenever you're going to stand up for something, make sure you show your face. Don't hide, and really make a stand. And I really respect Thomas for him, standing behind his daughter in this endeavor to do this thing and to continue to do this thing. And I do want to kind of wrap this episode of the Downloaded Content Podcast up by saying this. And I don't want to be misconstrued here. As a result of this whole conversation, we, the people of Wartown and people in the country, we need to really acknowledge where we're at. We are in a dystopian empire and there is a dictator who has essentially declared from on high that he is the law. Okay. Now, I don't care who you voted for. If that statement doesn't wake you up, there's no hope for you. Okay. No, we, the people, we are the source of the law, not a dictator. And we are in very, very dangerous times. And the lines are being drawn right now on where we stand. Now, they're not being drawn on Democrat versus Republican, left versus right. All of these paradigms are collapsing for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. Now, the good thing is that it's also causing the lines and walls of separation between demographics to dissolve like water. And we're all having no choice but to put all differences to the side and come together. And the way that the lines are being drawn and the sheep and the goats are being separated is you're going to have to start making decisions on whether or not you're going to take the philosophy of this to the extreme, which means extreme freedom and liberty, or you're going to start incrementally reducing the power of this document and these ideals by degrees, okay? And we can see you. We can see people who want to justify limiting our fundamental rights through either protocols of it's for your safety, it's for your own good, yeah, okay? Look, don't do that. Don't try to carry our founding documents and the principles of our country. Don't try to carry them any degree away from the clear language, okay? That's not a good thing, but those are the lines that are being drawn. How do you view this? Do you believe that we, the people, are the power behind the law, or do you believe that we should just let a trade union called the Bar Association delegate to us and define these terms for us? And so those are the lines that are being drawn. That's my take on it. Now, unfortunately, and I can't say it's as a result of this peaceable assembly, but your humble author, narrator, and fictional character wanted to tread very lightly in how I presented this story, because I got word not long after this peaceable assembly that Samantha's father had been terminated from his employment. Now, I don't think he's claiming that it is as a result of this assembly, and I'm not claiming that it was as a result of putting on this assembly. However, I would note that the timing is extremely coincidental. And that's sad. That's sad if it's true. If it's true that we are now at a place in our country where one can lose their livelihood for taking a stand and speaking against the popular opinions of a certain social class or whatever, that's horrible. If it's true, and I'm not saying that it is, and Thomas is, to my knowledge, is not saying that it is, but like I said, I don't really believe in coincidences. So, and in this community where there was a lot of people, with red hats and everything, I don't know, something to look at, and it's unfortunate. So, you guys, you spiritual people out there, pray for Thomas and his family that he can procure employment. I do know that they're going to be at the subsequent peaceable assemblies at the same location, which is Commercial Circle at the John Good Trouble Lewis mural, but they're not going to be actually executing it. So it's going to be more of a voluntary thing moving forward. And again, I don't want to be misconstrued here. I'm not saying that he was let off from his job because of it. But and that's a sad statement. If that's where we're at in the country, where using your First Amendment comes with threat, duress, and punishment one way or the other, either from the state or from the private sector, that's sad, and it should let a lot of people know where we're at. So that being the case, I will be at the next peaceable assembly. I will not be seeking a permit. I'll be there to tell the stories and get more interviews and talk to people who've been affected by this dictatorship. I think this is a wonderful thing. And I think that no matter who you voted for, you are to support this type of thing. You ought to show up and honk your horn if you can every Saturday until March the 22nd. It'll be at Commercial Circle. Yours truly will be there, at as many of them as possible. I'm pretty sure it'll stay safe, and a lot of cool people are uniting and sharing their stories, and it's a wonderful, wonderful thing, and you guys should really, really get involved. And I expect to see a lot more of this in Wartown as we're seeing it across the country. So I think it's a good idea to maintain good communication with local law enforcement. I like to call them peace officers, but I think it's a good idea to maintain good communication with them. But if I were in the position of people who were assembling peaceably, where you're being kind of, I don't know, intimidated or coerced to get a permit, that really wouldn't be my jam. Okay. I'm sorry, but the First Amendment is the First Amendment. So when you start negotiating away from it, I think you're in some very dangerous waters. So this has gone a little bit longer, but I think it's been very edifying for myself and Archer the Space Noodle, who has abandoned me. No, he's back there. You guys, once again, I want to let you know, thank you for supporting my shift over to the Downloaded Content podcast. Please go to Downloaded Content on Facebook and follow us there to get all of the wonderful images around town as we tell your stories. And that's another thing too. We are getting stories from all over town from people who have come in contact with local law enforcement and have horror stories, and they have been begging for us to help them tell their stories, and we're happy to oblige. And so, I want to thank Law Dixon for standing up and having the sharpness to make sure that he documented his encounter. And if you haven't seen our interview with Law Dixon, please go to Spotify and watch that episode or listen to that episode. So I want to thank him for starting something in this community where people are now reaching out to him and myself, and they want to tell their stories. And so if you have a story like that, please email me at dlc@downloadedcontent.com or send us a private message on Der Booking, the Downloaded Content page. And I will tell you that we are booked up right now because there's so many people who are reaching out right now, but we will get back to you and we will tell your story if we vet it, of course, and make sure that it's something that is going to affect all of us and doesn't have any, we have had some people who've reached out to us and their stories were like, oh, okay. But for the most part, that's not the case. A lot of people are reaching out with receipts that they have suffered legal abuse in this community, in this county. And I know that it is, standard operating procedure for people in local government to, well, this is an isolated incident. This is one bad apple or whatever. But I'm telling you, yours truly has a list of people that defy the notion that it is isolated incidents. I think it is a systemic thing, as I have openly expressed in my interview with Law Dixon. And so again, if you have a story, you want us to tell your story, bring you on the Downloaded Content podcast, please email me at dlc@downloadedcontent.com. Until then, guys, I'll see you Saturday, every Saturday until March 22nd at Commercial Circle. I voted for Trump. I didn't. But I'll see you there, and love you guys. Stay well, stay peaceful, exercise your rights, man. Stand on them, and don't water them down. You need to stand on your rights right now, like more than ever. And if you got kids, even more so, because it's not about you anymore. It's about your progeny. It's about the country that we're going to have to rebuild for your children. So if you're taking any of this stuff lightly, or you're leaving, salty remarks like the Karen on the Warner Robins Police Department Facebook page, then, I don't know what to tell you, man. Look, no bones about it, guys. I'm speaking to you straight from the heart. You live in a dictatorship. You live in a fascist empire. Don't delude yourself. Stop placating with Nazis. If you have to cut off friends and family who are siding or doing anything to excuse the actions of what's going on in our country, No, they are not your friends. They are not your family. They're not like you. We do not support Nazis in a free society. So until I see you guys on the streets, I love you. Stay free and stay well.